My name is Carolyn Scheibel. I am 30 years old and I am trans. I live and I grew up in West Virginia. Growing up, I had no real interest in politics. I was always told it was one of two topics in which you don't talk about, the other being religion. At age 20 is when I began my transition and I began to also pay attention to politics. I was heavily involved in the LGBT community. And it was during this time in which I kept hearing horror stories about people being disowned, attacked, and killed by the far right. I was fed constant misinformation about how the right was trying to take away our rights, and how if they were given power, or if I outed myself, I would become a target and a victim. I kept myself hidden. I was only out to my friends and family, and I did what I could to transition far away from as many people as possible, due to fear. In 2016, I began to out myself publicly, and I began to join some Facebook groups aimed at helping trans people. It was around this time in which I kept seeing constant posts about how Trump was going to take away our rights if he won, and how Hillary was the only answer. I have never been a fan of Hillary or a supporter of hers. I was always more on the side of Bernie. But when he allowed the two women to take over his rally, I began to doubt him greatly. And after what the DNC did to him, and he didn't fight it, and instead of trying to fight it, he threw his support behind Hillary, that was the final nail in the coffin for me. I had no one I wanted to vote for, no one I wanted to support. It was also during this time in which I started to see how toxic the left was becoming, because they would say things like, oh, if you don't support Hillary, you're a sexist, you're a bigot. Why would you support Trump? Because he's racist and a sexist and a bigot and everything. I looked for the claims that they were saying. I never saw any. I didn't see Trump as a racist, sexist, or a bigot because I never saw any evidence of him being racist, sexist, or a bigot. I was forced out of my own community because if I would speak against any misinformation that was floating around during that time, they would ostracize me. I would call people out for their anti-white racism, and I would call groups like Black Lives Matter and Antifa terrorists because, well, they're legally classified as terrorists under the FBI as domestic terrorist groups. It was also during this time in which I began to want to help my fellow trans people, because I've spent an eternity, it seems, researching, understanding, coming to understand how everything works. It's something I'm very passionate about. But I was constantly told by the left that if I tried to discuss or talk to or just be around the right, I would be an outcast due to me being trans. It's only recently that I have actually began to see that they have been using my trans status against me because I am a minority, and they have been using that to try to turn me against the right, saying that they would assault me, harass me, and everything else just because I exist. It has never been a fun existence. And it has been very hard because while I was in the LGBT community, I became friends with a few people, and they were pretty awesome people. But they started to spout the same rhetoric as the rest of the left. The whole, if somebody makes a rape accusation, you should listen and believe without question. That cis white men are the problem. I kept hearing things like, down with the patriarchy, down with cis heteronormativity, that cisgender is a problem. Oh, and that you don't have to have gender dysphoria in order to be trans, which you do. If you don't have gender dysphoria, you're not trans, period. Full stop, in the discussion. Non-dysphoric trans people is what they were called, or as we call them now, transgenders. It was during that time in which anytime I would try to speak up against their hatred of the white man, hatred of the far right, hatred of religion, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not a fan of religion myself. But there is a key difference between disliking and disagreeing fundamentally with religion and just hating on religious people because they believe in a higher power. While in the same vein, saying that it is racist if you want to stop, say, Muslims from coming into your country because they are by and far more prone to extremist views. But they're against religion. How does that work out for them? But while in those groups, I would speak out and I would be attacked. I would be harassed. I have been doxxed at least twice. I have had my aunt contacted on my father's side by people because she shares the name of my mother. I have had my sister be contacted by them at least twice that I can recall. I have had multiple people, just multiple people harassing me and calling me a bigot, calling me a transphobe, calling me homophobic, racist. I've even been called a Nazi by them. Simply because I disagree with what they are spouting. They make claims like Trump is trying to take away our rights. I've yet to find any evidence of this. It is perplexing, to say the least. And it's not... I'm not exactly sure how to even say it, but it's difficult whenever you lose friends and family due to a political difference. Because growing up, I looked up to my cousin, and when Trump won, she essentially flipped out. She posted a video on Facebook crying and saying how she was so terrified and afraid of the future because she was afraid of Trump's America. I messaged her and I posted on her Facebook saying that we should give him a chance because we don't know what he will do. And she blocked me for it. I looked up to her. I was friends with her growing up. And she completely removed me from her life simply because I just said, give him a chance. And when he started his presidency, I didn't like him. I thought he was going to do a terrible job, but he hasn't. He's done a relatively good job. But honestly, I am afraid. And I'm afraid of the future, but not because of the right. I'm afraid of the future because of the left. Because I'm afraid of what they will do if they are given power. Because it's bad enough whenever somebody makes a false rape accusation and they lose everything. I can only imagine how worse it can be, how worse it would be if they were given free rein. And it's hard. It's hard to overcome that fear, but I'm more afraid of not standing up for my own beliefs. They want to hide themselves behind avatars. They want to hide themselves behind masks. They want to spew their hate without challenge. And that's just wrong. No matter how you slice it, no matter how you look at it, that's just wrong. It took me a long time to realize that I'm not liberal, that I'm not on the left, that I am in favor of the individual over the group. It's been very hard. I have lost friends. I have lost family members due to this. However, despite my fear, I will never hide. And I'm glad I can walk away. Thank you for your time.